Hi guys. So for my presentation, I'm going to be presenting on the topic de-escalation training in law enforcement. So the purpose of my presentation is to showcase what I learned about de-escalation training from the perspective of a Las Cruces police officer named Johnny, who has 7 years of experience, and I'll be comparing the information with what I learned about de-escalation through research. The goal for for my interview and paper was to see what de-escalation training is composed of, and to see if there are any education on mental health, and to discover benefits of de-escalation training. I also did want to start off by sharing some statistics of yeah. So I wanted to provide insight on my reasonings and wanting to pursue this topic. So a report by I'm about to butcher this name, guys. Sorry, but a report by Sin Yang Wei and others state that in the year 2021, 1,135 individuals were killed by police officers. The report provides further details that half of the individuals were reported in having a gun. However, there is evidence that 1 in 8 of these individuals who were armed with a gun were not making threats to harm anybody in the moment they were murdered, and the situation could have been de escalated. So the question is, why weren't these situations de escalated? I believe the common answer to this is that there was no proper training for police officers to know how to de escalate a situation. According to Stockton, there are currently 21 states that do not require de escalation training for police officers. So that means like half of the United States are conducting de escalation training. Going back to the fact of how 1 in 8 individuals who had a gun that were not making any threats and harming anyone, that their life could have been spared had any de escalation techniques or tactics been implemented in these situations. Perhaps by looking at the map, it can back up the conclusion that the police officers did not have any de escalation training. I wouldn't be surprised if these altercations occurred in any of the 21 states that do not require the training. So, before talking about de escalation training, I wanted to provide a few examples of how to define de escalation. So, Johnny, during our interview, defined de escalation as when you take control of the situation that's already out of control. I found a definition by Angel and others that de escalation training is taking action or communicating verbally or non verbally during a potential force encounter in attempt to stabilize the situation and reduce the immediacy of the threat so that more time, options, and resources can be called upon to resolve the situation without the use of force or with reduction in the force necessary. So I thought I'd create my own definition that combines both Johnny's and what research has taught me. So my definition is getting control of a situation while diminishing the opportunity and applying force and ensuring safety in everyone that is involved. I feel it would be helpful to cover what Johnny explained to me, what kind of de escalation training he undergoes as a police officer for Las Cruces. So, during the interview, Johnny explained that for the Las Cruces Police Department, de escalation training starts from the beginning of the police academy. He explained that there are yearly trainings and that the New Mexico requires every officer to complete a certain number of training hours every 2 years. With de escalation training, it can occur up to once to twice a year. Mental health is also included in the training to teach officers how to deal in situations where the individual is suffering from a mental health issue. Johnny also included that when new studies of mental health take place, the police department or individuals involved in the study educate the officers with the new information. Johnny also elaborated that the information teaches the officers on how to approach an individual with mental health issues. A few examples Johnny provided were not yelling at the individual, which is a tactic that can work with people who don't have any mental health issues. Another example is to avoid pointing their flashlights at the individual because it can be triggering. Additional triggers that an officer needs to be aware of are making eye contact, touching, lights, and sirens. So I also asked Johnny how effective he believes de escalation training is. He shared with me that the training is really effective because it helps you understand to get tips and what to expect when you're out there in the field. As far as effectiveness, the best thing to do is to go out there and do it and to get the feel for it. So for a rookie officer, it is about 30 to 40% effective, while for experienced officers, it would be about 60% effective. So I asked Johnny what he considers are the correct ways to de escalate a situation. Johnny expressed there are several different ways. It just depends because everyone is different with their approach. So for him, if it is a domestic disturbance, he explained that he would want to approach the situation as if it was his own relationship. For example, if there was a couple arguing, he would try to reason with them and get to their level and even try to use his experience in being married for so many years. If the disturbance is between a parent and child, Johnny said that you would want to approach the situation in a parenting way. He explained that he was use his experience as a parent to give the parent tips. Johnny stated that the main goal with these different situations is just to try to figure out what you have right away so you don't use the wrong approach. I also asked Johnny what he considers are the incorrect ways to de escalate a situation. So, Johnny said that the wrong thing to do was to go in there and telling the parent that, you're the parent, you need to figure it out. He explained that that's not really helping or de escalating the situation, and you're not even getting control of the situation. Another incorrect thing to do is showing up thinking that you have an answer when you haven't even fully investigate or what you're even trying to de escalate. Johnny did admit to me that he has made statements like this before and learned that comments like these do not help, nor is the officer gaining control of the situation. Although Johnny did acknowledge in making these incorrect actions of de escalation, I believe it may have happened when he was a rookie and not having experience as a parent due to not being a parent yet. The reason why I bring this to attention, because I believe is a possible explanation as why he said rookie officers are only 30% effective when faced in these situations. It could also be a lack of experience, lack of knowledge in being married and a parent. Although it appears that the training that Johnny undergoes teaches on how to properly communicate with individuals in stressful events, perhaps there's not enough training or education about marriage and parenting. So then, I also wanted to ask Johnny what he believes are the incorrect ways to de escalate a situation when mental health takes a role. So, Johnny explained to me that the best ways to slow down. Um, Johnny did admit to me that he has not had much experience with dealing with individuals who have mental health issues, but he explained that it will be the same way as dealing with a child. He explained when a child sees an officer, they know that the officer's in charge, that they have authority. They know that the individual that is trying to help is an officer and that they can trust the officer. Johnny further elaborated that it's the same thing for someone who has mental health issues. The individual who has mental health issues may not show it, but they know who the officers are, and they know to a certain extent that they can trust the officer. So Johnny said you will want to slow down, talk to them like they're a friend, and of course you want to avoid triggering them, and you kind of want to just catch their attention so that you could de-escalate the situation. So I wanted to ask Johnny to what he believes are the incorrect ways to de-escalate a situation when mental health takes a role. He said the wrong thing to do is to rush the situation, that you never want to go in being hands on or putting handcuffs on. So, to conclude what I learned from my interview with Johnny, I was curious in learning how much mental health is covered for the Las Cruces Police Department. The reason why is because I discovered through research that, according to the report by Sin Yang Wei and others, in 2021, at least 104 out of the 1,135 individuals who were murdered by police officers were experiencing a mental health crisis. And these individuals were described as behaving unsteadily. So, my own personal assumption on the possibilities why these individuals were murdered were due to the officers not being able to de escalate the situation. There could be a variety of reasons on why, such as not enough training on de escalation or education on mental health where these murders took place. Another could be the officers were too fast in acting, not spending enough time to investigate the situation. However, when we recall the 21 states that do not require de-escalation training, I think we could conclude that these officers from these 21 states are practicing the incorrect ways to de-escalate a situation that Johnny had explained earlier. Now, the next part of my presentation, I will be covering what I learned about de-escalation training through research. So, to gain further insight on the type of training that law enforcement complete, I discovered in an article by Olivia and others that explains how law enforcement utilize the MEFMIS model of the Crisis Intervention Team, the CIT program. So, Olivia explains in her report that the program consists of 5 days of training, completing 40 hours total. That the training is structured to be a combination of classroom setting along with performance-based training and role-play scenarios. So, topics that are taught in the program include mental health disorders, addiction, age-related disabilities, inpatient psychiatric units, de-escalation skills, and crisis intervention skills by participating in role-play settings. I did discover that the scenarios utilized for the crisis interventions come from realistic incidents that have occurred before. Mental health professionals provide feedback over the curriculum to ensure that developing the skills are effective and based on accurate information. I discovered further information of how much mental health is not entirely included in training for police officers. According to Hacker and Horan, who gathered data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics of the U.S. Department, stated, excuse me, uh, stated that the standard training that recruits experience consists of 21 weeks of training with a total of 840 hours before beginning patrol duties. The article explains that at least 123 hours of training is focused on weapons and self-defense. However, mental health did not appear to be a topic in the trainings. The article does explain that there seems to be a struggle on how to convey mental health training The design for training changes quite frequently, and the information is inconsistent. So, in conclusion, we were able to learn different perspectives of what de escalation training for police officers consists of. We learned how the training fluctuates in different states by discovering what other trainings evolve and learning that 21 states do not require the training. By reviewing the statistics of how many lives have been lost in 2021 from police encounters, with some of these deaths being related to mental health issues, we can assume that it was due to not enough training or education on both de escalation and on mental health. So, to further complete my presentation, I would like to play my interview with Johnny. All right. Oh, Johnny, thank you today for your time for this interview. I just wanted to ask you a few questions over the topic of de escalation. So, my first question for you would be, how would you define the word de escalation?
De escalation is when you take control of the situation that's already out of control. It's probably the best way to put it in law enforcement.
So then, what type of trainings do you undergo as a police officer in de-escalating a situation?
So I've been a cop for almost 7 years. We had training pretty much from the start in the police academy, and every year we do biennium training. As a police officer in New Mexico, you have to have a certain amount of training hours every 2 years. My current department does training at least once or twice a year for de-escalation, to include kind of like mental health and how to deal with them. That's a big thing. So we probably do de-escalation training every 3 months.
So, in your opinion, how effective are de-escalation trainings?
De-escalation trainings are really good. It really helps you to understand, get tips, and kind of have an idea of what to expect when you go out. But as far as effectiveness, you really need to just go out and do it. So I'd say to a regular police officer, like a rookie coming out, it's probably about 30 to 40% effective. And then the other 60% would come from actually dealing with people and de-escalating the situation.
Interesting. So, what are the correct ways to de-escalate a situation?
So there's several different ways to go about de-escalating a situation. It really just depends because every person is different. So like if it's a domestic disturbance, you're going to want to go at it as if you would in, I guess, your own relationship, or go at it in a relationship way, versus if it's like a mom and kid, you're going to want to go at it like in a parenting way. For example, if I go up to a couple who's arguing, I'm going to try to reason with them, and I get on their level and maybe use my experience from being married for so many years. Or same thing if it's with kids and they're fighting, use my experience as a parent to help give them tips. When it comes to different situations like that, the main goal is try to figure out what you have right away so that you don't use the wrong approach.
Okay. That's kind of like my next question. What are the incorrect ways to de-escalate a situation?
So the incorrect way to de-escalate a situation, for example, like the parenting one, because I've done this before because my kids are pretty young. When you show up to a call and it's a mom and she has older kids and they're fighting with each other, and you tell her, you know what, you're a parent, it's your job, you need to figure it out. That's true, and that's what we all want to say, and that's what I have said. But on the same note, you're not helping. So, in a sense, you're not de-escalating. You're not getting control of the situation, like I said in the first question. So what you don't want to do is show up and think you have an answer when you haven't even investigated or decided what you're actually trying to de-escalate.
Okay, that's good. So, what are the dangers or risks in not de-escalating a situation?
Well, if you don't de-escalate a situation, you'll have control of the situation. If you don't have control of the situation, as a police officer, there's no reason for you to be there. Because realistically speaking, any call we go to can probably be handled by the people who are there, people who are calling. Mm-hmm. The reason why they're calling us is because they need the outside help, which is most of the time to step in and take control for them because they don't know how to do it themselves.
So then, in your experience, when a life is lost during a de-escalation, what is the impact on the police officers involved?
So we just had a situation where we were de-escalating male subject on a call, and it ended with him taking his life. And I know it was very rough on all the police officers who were there. It sucked for me, especially having to deal with the family and trying to figure out what to do, because it's not very often that happens, but it does happen. When this happened to us, we had a lot of young officers with us, and I had it happen a couple times before, so I kind of knew what to expect. But at the end of the day, every person is different, so you can't go about your situation the same way. So you need to we call it debrief. So and there's people that you're not going to be able to de-escalate. Like I tell my officers whenever we show up, if you are going to a call, for example, like a domestic disturbance, the one that we had, they're already fighting before someone called the cops. At least a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes, 20 minutes. We've had it to where it's hours that they're fighting before we're called. So before we even show up, this person already knows that the cops are probably going to be called. They know we're going to show up. If they have weapons, they know they've already made up their mind before we show up. So there's not a lot we can do as police officers other than try. Unfortunately, sometimes when we try, it doesn't end well. And that's going to carry on with the officers for pretty much the whole career.
Understood. In your experience, when a life is lost during an escalation, what is the impact on the individuals involved?
Well, there's a bunch of different impacts. For the one that I was just talking about, I know the family is real sad. The spouse of the male who took his life, she blamed us, which is okay. I guess that's what we're there for, even though we had nothing to do with it. Like I said, he made up his decision before we showed up. Even though we talked to him for, felt like hours, he was going to do what he was going to do. Yeah. It sucks for the family having to deal with the kids, and the kids asking where their dad is. We're only there for a few short hours while we're on the call. Once I go home, I'm done with it. I leave it at the door. I don't think about it. We might talk about it a few days later. Like I said, it'll come up throughout your career. So you can think about it, pass by the house, stuff like that. But we're not the ones that have to live with it. It's the families. So all I can tell you is what I see in the few hours that I'm with them, which is sadness, and I don't know what else really follows, but I know it's not a good thing. Yeah. So if we're able to show up and able to de-escalate it, you need to try your best.
Interesting. When encountering a situation where mental health issues play a role, do the de-escalation strategies change or remain the same?
So it changes. The good thing is with mental health, it's easier than dealing with regular people or regular people who are just fighting and having a bad day, because there's a lot of studies that go into mental health. And luckily for us, whenever these studies take place, the departments and the people who do these studies bring it to us because they know that we're the first ones to come in. So we know in dealing with someone with mental health, you're not going to de-escalate them the way you would someone else by yelling at them or coming up to them or even pointing your light at them, because these are things that will trigger them. So the department's really good at teaching us different things that will trigger them, such as touching, eye contact, lights, sirens, and other things we could expect based off of studies that other people who are smarter than me have done.
So what are the correct ways to de-escalate a situation when there is mental health involved?
So the best way to de-escalate it when there's someone who has mental health illnesses is to slow down. I have yet to deal with someone with a mental illness that I can't consider that be the same as dealing with a kid. When kids see you, they know you're the authorities. They know that you're the one in charge. They know you're the cop. They know that they can trust you. Same with people with mental health. They might not show it, but they know who we are, and they know to a certain extent they can trust us because they have the mind of a child the majority of the time. So when you deal with them, you just want to slow down. You want to talk to them like a friend. You want to avoid triggering them. And you want to try your best to catch a hook on them. Find something that really, really catches their attention where you're able to find a way in to start de-escalating them.
Understood. So are you able to provide any incorrect ways to de-escalate a situation when there is mental health involved?
Yeah, it would be kind of to rush a situation. If you know that there's someone who has mental health issues and you've been there before, you don't want to rush it. You don't want to go in and just start putting hands on. You don't want to start putting handcuffs on them. You don't want to start yelling at them. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to. and it sucks, but we could control the situation to a certain extent.
Mhm.
But of course, if we have like for example, I had someone just about a week or two ago who has mental health illnesses, and we try our best to slow down and talk to him.
Mhm.
But as we were doing this, he was picking up rocks, throwing them at his caretaker, trying to punch his caretaker. And unfortunately, we had to put him in handcuffs, set him in the car, and forcefully take him for an evaluation. Because all the other things that we've tried before, the little hooks that I was talking about, such as giving him a teddy bear or asking him to show us his room, weren't working on this day. And that's where we had to really slow down and figure out what was going to happen. But on the same page, we had to realize once he was escalating the situation on his own, and our slow down methods and the bear method and showing us his room method weren't working, we had to take control of the situation before he took control of the situation.
Understood. So my last question is, what is your opinion that 21 states do not require de-escalation training for police officers?
So if you don't have de-escalation training, there's no point in being a police officer. Like I said at the beginning, we show up to calls where people could probably handle on their own, but they need someone who's going to de-escalate it, who's going to take control. If you're part of the 21 states that don't do that, then you're not helping. It sucks that people still don't practice de-escalation, but there's a lot of different states that are behind, small states, stuff like that. And I'm just happy that we belong with a state that does do as much de-escalation training as we can, as well as mental health training, because it helps. Makes our job easier, makes us safer, makes the community safer.
Awesome. Good. Well, that's all I have for you, so thank you for your time, Donnie. All right.
Sorry about that, guys. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.